York's classic rock, Q1043.
I welcome back Stanley Nelson, Emmy Award-winning documentarian, and his pieces have just been extraordinary on the Black Panther Party, Michael Vick, and now in theaters this coming Friday and on Showtime starting November 6th, the extraordinary Attica. It is 50 years since the Attica Rebellion. 1,200 inmates seized the yard, taking more than 36 guards and civilians hostage. And they kept this going for 5 days till the National Guard came in. 29 inmates and 10 hostages were killed. That was the end result of this siege. First of all, congratulations. I think my mouth literally fell open watching this. There was so much I did not know about the Attica Rebellion. First of all, Stanley, tell us why you chose to do this project and what surprised you the most in the research and the interviews in what you found through those interviews and research.
Yeah, I was a young guy in '71 when Attica happened, and we kind of heard about it and knew about it, but I knew that the whole story hadn't been told. The reasons why the prisoners rebelled. What actually happened day to day. So I, for a long time, I've really wanted to make this film. I also have also wanted to make a film or films about the prison system because it's just gone nuts in the U.S. So I really wanted to make this film for a long time. I think I mean when we started, we knew that some footage existed. Right, we knew some footage existed, but we didn't have any idea, of the footage, the magnitude of the footage that existed. The sheer volume of stuff. One of the things that the prisoners did, from almost the moment that they seized the prison, is they invited the media in because they felt that the media scrutiny would give them some kind of safety. And so they invited TV cameras in, and for the whole 5 days of the rebellion, cameras were filming what was going on, inside the negotiations between the prisoners and law enforcement.
You spoke with people who were involved in the rebellion. You also spoke with families of the hostages. Again, what did you learn that was most surprising to you from both?
Well, I mean, I think it was a really fascinating story, Attica, because it's taking place on multiple levels. There's the prisoners inside the yard, who have seized the yard. There's their story. There's the story right outside of the walls of Attica as law enforcement gathers, and for the 5 days, over 500 law enforcement officers are gathering. So there's a story there. There's the story of the families, who are waiting outside the gates and not knowing what is happening with inside it with their relatives who are being held hostages. There's the governor, who's kind of finally in charge, Governor Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller at the time. And then there's Richard Nixon, the president of the United States, who gets involved. So the story is taking place on so many different levels.
What were the conditions at Attica that instigated this rebellion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that really hasn't been examined enough, and we really take time in this film. The what made the prisoners rebel. They were given, a roll of toilet paper a month. like simply, that says that they were fed on 63 cents a day, was the budget that they were fed on. So that's 21 cents a meal, that they had to survive on. The guards were all from, around Attica, New York, which is, about 250 miles from New York City, and a very rural area. So the guards were all from there, and that it was just a job. I mean, they weren't trained as prison guards. The town, it was a prison town, as someone says in the film. You could either be a dairy farmer or you could work in the prisons. And so that it was just a job to them. And they, didn't know anything about the prison, which was probably about 70%, African American. So, these were the conditions, and they suffered, beatings, killings, terrible, terrible medical care.
It seemed for most of the days, for 4 days, it seemed like this was going to be there was going to be a negotiated end to this peacefully, till one of the hostages, a prison guard, was killed. How was this guard killed? You didn't go through that in the film.
Yeah, no, we did. I mean, you could easily miss it. The guard was beaten on the first day. That was the guard that was beaten on the first day.
Okay.
And he was put in. He was beaten very badly during the takeover, and the inmates, 4 Muslim inmates, carried him out and gave them to the outside, to the ambulances outside, and he was taken to the hospital. And he survived for 3 days, and then on the third day, he actually passed away.
Okay.
And so that. Well, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but that in many ways is kind of the changing point in the story.
Right, because that is when the decision was made to send in the National Guard. And as I said, in the end, 29 inmates and 10 hostages were killed. Now, the public was told that it was the inmates that killed the hostages, but that is not what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reports at first and for a few days were that the hostages were killed by the inmates. But no hostages were killed by inmates at all, and that it is it kind of the first news that stays with you, so that that was the way that it was thought of, even though even at the time, after a couple of days, it was refuted. But it's come down that the inmates killed the hostages, although none of the hostages were killed by the inmates. They were all killed by law enforcement as they took over. Again, not to tell too much of the film, but the first thing they did was shoot tear gas, into the prison, so they couldn't see. I mean, you couldn't see, and they just shot over 500 rounds of ammunition into the yard, and just killed people indiscriminately.
I'm speaking with Stanley Nelson. He is the director, along with Tracy Curry, of Attica, which you can see in some theaters starting Friday, and also you can see on Showtime starting November 6th. The footage in this documentary is absolutely extraordinary. I think the most shocking scene was when all this was over and 29 inmates were dead and 10 hostages were dead, and the inmates in the yard were forced to strip naked and crawl through their latrine, which they had home crafted during the rebellion, crawl through feces. You are seeing these naked men. Now, for some, that brought to mind images of slavery. To me, that brought to mind images of the Holocaust.
Yeah,
these skinny they were all very skinny.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're fed on 63 cents a day, for years. But they're also, forced to strip naked and with their hands on their head and just line up, and you see them around, the yard, or sitting, nude, or crawling through feces, or crawling through mud, which had no purpose, as one of the inmates said in the film. They had surrendered. There was abject surrender, and now it just moved into torture. Besides, killing 39 people, it now just moves into real torture, and
with beatings and more.
yeah, and luckily there's footage and stills of that, and it's really stark, and you really see it.
One of the things you didn't do in this documentary, Attica, was say the inmates that you interviewed, you didn't say what they were serving time for.
I mean, I think that's irrelevant. It's really irrelevant. What they were in for, and as they say so eloquently over and over again, just because we've committed crimes, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be treated as human beings. And if you think about it, what did you want us to do? Like, say, somebody armed robbery, or somebody drug dealing. I mean, that's not who they are. They're human beings, and I think that's the point of the film. Not what crime they committed or didn't commit.
We only have about 2 minutes left. Did this make an impact at all in terms of prison reform, the Attica Rebellion, and what happened after?
I think it did, especially for the short term. There were more, educational programs in prisons. There were, other things. Certainly the food increased. Probably they got more toilet paper. Little things like that. But I think that that's contrasted with the fact that there's now 2 million people in prison, right? So at the same time, maybe things got a little better in prison for a while, or some prisons, but also we've incarcerated so many more people, and we just continue to incarcerate people, that's the solution for all the problems. We'll just lock them up. And I think one of the things that the film makes you see and makes you think about is the fact that they are human beings, and that, as one guy says in the film so eloquently, the first night that they're out, he hadn't seen the sky at night for 22 years, and there's 2 million people who tonight will not see the stars, will not see the sky, and we don't think about them at all. And that's kind of what prisons are meant to do, right? They're meant to lock people away, and we don't have to think about it. But hopefully, seeing this film, for some people will at least make them think about, what we're doing, what we did, in Attica 50 years ago, and what we're doing today.
Thank you so much, Stanley Nelson. I know you have to go. To my listeners, as I was watching this, I was thinking of what's going on at Rikers Island, because there is a story that has to be told on both sides. 5 inmates have died this year at Rikers Island. There's a shortage of corrections guards. The correction officers were hit very hard by COVID. There is a story there as well that has not yet been told. Again, Attica is in theaters, some theaters, this coming Friday, and you can also see it on Showtime starring November 6th. I would not be at all surprised if Stanley Nelson does not add another Emmy to his collection as a result of this extraordinary documentary, so layered. And I will join you in a minute after we take a break. Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q104.3.